name is Michael Perry, and today I am interviewing Dick Berggren for the Motorsports Hall of Fame, and this is a Spark interview. Okay, I believe we met a little bit prior, but I have a couple of questions listed for you here, and without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start asking you these.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have.
Okay.
At least I hope I can.
Yeah.
The most important thing is I get it right, you know.
Mm-hmm. So what was your introduction to motorsports?
My introduction to motorsports happened at a very young age, Michael.
Okay.
I was 8 years old, and there was a sign on the side of the road going to a place that I always liked going to, my Uncle Bill's house. And the sign had a picture of a race car on it, and it said stock car racing every Sunday afternoon. Well, that sounded interesting, so I started asking my dad, can you take us there? Instead of going to see Uncle Bill some Sunday, let's go to the races. Okay, we'll do that. We went to the races, and I'll tell you what, it was the most exciting thing I've ever seen in my life. And I said, I want to do more of that. I want to be just like one of those guys. In fact, I picked one out, Art Russo, 621, because his car was from the same town I grew up in.
Okay.
And that was the start.
Can you recall the first race that you attended?
I can recall everything about it. You mean the first one I saw?
The first one that you saw.
I can tell you a lot about it. The music that they played in the background was Rock Around the Clock.
Okay.
I bought Illustrated Speedway News. I wish I still had it, but my mother cleaned out when I left house. I just sat in the grandstand and I was amazed. They brought the driver that won the race up into the grandstand so you could get close to him. You could see him outside the car.
Okay, you kind of felt that adrenaline going, like you were like, I want to be there, like I want to do that.
Yeah.
That kind of launched your career. So it brings me to my next question. How did your racing career begin? And like,
you mean driving race cars?
Well, I mean, that's what the questions actually listed. I'm over here reading the actual questions themselves, but it says here, like, how did your own racing career begin? Yeah.
Well, driving race cars, that's what I wanted to do right from the very start.
I mean, I can imagine, the adrenaline, like, seeing the other racers, and you're like, oh, man. I would want to do that if I'm not in film directing. I'd want to be racing cars or something, because that sounds so cool.
Sure. I mean, that's the best thing you can do in automobile racing. It's fun to watch it. Yeah. It's probably an enterprising thing to be a track operator. But a lot of people, and I'm included, want to be a driver. And I wanted to be just like the drivers that I saw at Stafford Speedway that day. Of course, I had no idea what they were really like and how to do it. Absolutely no idea how to do it. But I knew that I wanted to race.
Okay. So you raced modified stock cars and sprint cars. Do you prefer any car over the other? I noticed that you said you love the stock cars right off the bat, but is there any that you'd specifically prefer?
Yeah. The cars that I prefer are the cars that stick, the ones that run well,
okay.
The ones that when you put your foot down on the throttle,
Okay.
I don't like the rear wheel spinning and the car looking like it's going to slide off the racetrack.
That's what my car looks like right now. I got to go get the wheels off.
Yeah, but I did best in the sprint car. I won 20 features racing sprint cars. I won one feature racing a super modified and just 2 racing stock cars. Okay. I was lousy on asphalt and much better on dirt. Give me a car with too much horsepower, let me throw it in a corner, I'm good.
Oh.
Give me a car where you have to finesse it, you have to be very careful, you have to be consistent, I'm terrible.
Okay. And so for someone that's not super extremely knowledgeable about race cars, and I'm more in my niche of film directing and doing these interviews and so forth. So what differentiates a sprint car from one of these other cars that they race in NASCAR? Because I noticed we've got the truck series, we've got the stock cars, the modified. What differentiates them, and what really pops out for you when you say sprint cars?
Sprint car is a car that's got the engine in the center of the car. Yeah. The drive shaft literally is between your legs. It's got a relatively short wheelbase, about 84 inches, much less than the NASCAR stock cars have. And you're right out there in the wind with that car. You can, at the time when I drove it, you could see the driver's arms in the car. You can't anymore. They've now got panels that prevent that. But it's an open wheel car. There's no fenders to it. And many of the sprint cars, most of them have a wing on top to help produce additional downforce to improve the grip.
On top near the back. Because I'm really new. I mean, I'm new to this stuff, right?
You got it.
Back, right? It's the one in the back, right? I'm gonna have to look up these new words. I've heard my friends use the terminology fender. What's fender for someone like me that doesn't know?
Yeah, well, a fender is just sheet metal over the top of your tire.
Okay.
And a sprint car doesn't have any of that.
Right on top. Yeah, I noticed some of them can go real low near the ground. Up to my next question here. So you described yourself as a terrible student in high school.
Beyond terrible.
So later, you earned your graduate degree in psychology. What changed for you in between?
Well, what really happened was when I was in high school, I spent far more time at Center Motor Sales with Bob Oliver's stock car and at Billy Boudreaux's garage with his stock car than I did paying attention to my schoolwork. So I didn't take books home. I cut classes so I could go to races and work on cars. My grades were absolutely terrible. My guidance counselor said I wasn't smart enough to ever be able to get into college and do well with it. He said, just find out how to run a drill press and go do that. So that's what I did when I got done with high school, and I barely get out of high school.
Yeah.
And when I did get out of high school, I got a job at the big factory that was near us at the time, and I couldn't make enough money to buy a race car. And so I got a second job. So now I'm working 2 8-hour shifts, and I still don't have enough money to buy a race car.
Yeah.
So I said,
You were working hard. I mean, I can imagine.
yeah, I was working hard, but I wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
So I decided that maybe if I went to college and got a college degree, I would be able to make some progress with this. So I did. I found a school that would accept anybody, regardless of what your high school grades were or what your guidance counselor said. And I went to Quinnipiac College for a year, did well, transferred to another college where tuition was less. And by the way, my girlfriend was going to that college too, so that helped. And I got done with that, and I could make decent money with a bachelor's degree. But if I only had a master's degree, then I could, I'm thinking more tires, better engines.
Yeah.
I got the master's degree, and if I got a PhD, I could really get some big motors, and I could have plenty of tires. That's what happened. It was all about trying to make the money to go race.
Was it difficult? I mean, like going up that education while you're working. Were you working on the side?
Oh yeah,
the
I did all kinds of things on the side to make money. I mean, I worked in a lumber yard during the summertime, unloading boxcars full of 2x4s and 2x8s.
But you like to do it, right? I mean, it was something that was natural to you. You love to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned the topic of dissociation. I mean, that's a long word for me. Was sleep deprivation.
Oh.
So what what prompted your interest in this?
Well, I was always interested in psychology.
Okay.
It started way back when I was just interested in what makes people do things.
And we've got to have a longer conversation because I love that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so that was important. And I got very interested in the perception part of it. How do people see reality? How do things work? When somebody sees something, how does it register in their mind, and how do they respond to it? In the process of the perception thing, I got particularly interested in some of the visual stuff that was going on. But when you go to sleep at night and you dream, your eyes are moving back and forth in your head. It's called rapid eye movements, REM movements. And I wondered if that might have something to do with trying to keep the eyes coordinated. Now, when you and I are as close together as we are, we're about 6 feet apart, your picture of me in the right eye is a little bit different than the picture of me in your left eye. Yeah. And so your brain says, oh, he's about 6 feet away. And I wondered if those rapid eye movements, while you're dreaming, had something to do with trying to keep the eyes together so that they could continue to do that well when you woke up the next morning. So what I did was I had subjects that slept, and I put things on. I could tell when they were going into rapid eye movement. I'd wake them up, and then let them go back to sleep again. As soon as they went into rapid eye movement, I'd wake them up again.
Okay.
So I was depriving them not of sleep, but of rapid eye movement during sleep. And then I had tests the next day that would determine whether they could see distance as well, judge distance as well, and if they'd been deprived of rapid eye movement versus when they'd had it. And it turned out, indeed, if you deprive people of rapid eye movement during sleep, their depth perception is not as good as it otherwise might have been.
Interesting. Very fascinating. I've never heard of such a thing. That's amazing. They should have
it's a long way from a stock car and a dirt track, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I can imagine. I mean, and I can imagine there was a lot of studying. Was that what you wrote about for your PhD?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Am I able to see that? I mean, do you still have access to that information?
I do have it.
I'd love to read about that. Just know more information.
You have to put it in a bound book and somewhere in my collection, unless I gave it to the museum somewhere.
It's like there. Over here on the wall and you didn't know.
Yeah, it might be. You never know.
Okay, so you told a famous story that one day only one vehicle available to you was your truck connected
Oh, gee.
to your race trailer.
Where did you find out about that?
These are the questions that are listed for me.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, which still had your mud-covered car on it, and that you parked in the faculty parking lot in the college.
College
College president. Yeah, you tell me the story because I can imagine you could probably explain this better than the question here.
Yeah. Well, what happened was I was trying to race a modified and trying to race a sprint car too. Two different kinds of racetracks, two different racetracks. I didn't have a lot of money. We had a Ram truck, we had a truck and a trailer,
Okay.
and I had volunteers helping me. And stuff just went all over the place.
Okay.
Well, there was one Monday morning where I got out of the house and I looked, and the only thing in my driveway was the ramp truck, the open ramp truck with the sprint car on the back. And I said, well, I guess that's how I'm going to go to school to teach my classes. I was teaching at the time at an all-women's Catholic college in Boston, so here I am, I drive the race car in there with a truck with a race car on the back, park it in the faculty parking lot, and I go up to my office and I'm all set to begin my classes in a few minutes, and I hear, Dr. Berggren, report to the president's office right now. I go, oh boy, what have I done now?
Yeah.
So I got there, and she said, what is that thing in the parking lot with your name on it? And I said, well, sister, that's a
Oh,
sprint
your
car.
name on it too?
Oh, yeah, that's a sprint car. She said, I don't care what you call it, get it out of here.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, everything I have in the world is in that car, and I'm not about to take and put it on the streets of Boston. I have classes coming up. She says, get it out of here. I don't want the students to see that
For
thing.
what reason?
Well, who knows? I don't know what her problem was, but there are some times when arguing with the person that's in charge, that's your boss, doesn't get you where you're going. So I wound up parking the thing behind the cafeteria, the faculty cafeteria,
Okay.
and I knew right then that I didn't fit in, and that something else was going to have to be in my future.
Okay. And did they find it after that when you parked it behind the cafeteria?
Not long after
No.
that. I had an opportunity that came that I had tried to get before, which was to edit Stock Car Racing magazine. Phone rang one day, and if there's anything I can tell you about how things work in this world, it is that the most important thing of getting you where you want to go is to have people who know you and trust you and believe in you. The guy that was the editor of Stock Car Racing magazine was leaving the job to go take the job as the editor of Runner's World in California. The company at the time was run by people who knew nothing about automobile racing. I've been contributing stories and photography to that magazine for years and just begged to get the job as the editor of the magazine. They wouldn't even give me an interview, nothing. Now they were desperate. 2 weeks. And this guy's leaving. They got nobody to run the magazine. Who do we know? Well, that guy Berggren, he writes stories, he does pictures. Let's see if he'll do it. So I got a call, and the call said, well, we'd like to give you the job of doing Stock Car Magazine. Well, by then I was ready for yet another year at the college level, and I said, I've already signed a contract, I can't do it. And the guy said, how much are you making as a college professor? I told him, he said, if you're with me in 2 weeks to edit Stock Car Racing magazine, I'm going to double that. I said, sir, you just hired an editor. And so what wound up happening was I basically did both for a while. I was teaching at the college level, and I was also doing the magazine, which was a nightmare.
Yeah, how was your sleep schedule at that point?
I didn't get
Having
much.
studied sleep
Yeah, I
deprivation.
didn't get much sleep. It was
Yeah.
really tough.
Mhm.
But at any rate, that's how I wound up where I wound up with that job, and that was my entree. The magazine was my entree to
Kinda
a
like
full-time
your,
job.
Introduction to kind of like your career kind of thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But
So, like, as
the
opposed to,
fact that the editor who was leaving knew me and said, "This is the guy."
the connection.
That was the connection.
Okay.
None of them knew me or anybody else,
Mhm.
and he only named one person. He knew me,
Okay.
and we were friends.
Yeah.
So that was big.
I was just reading a book just recently that told me the smaller connections are the ones that lead to the bigger connections.
I think that's good. A
Do
good
you think
point.
that's a good way to put it?
Yeah, it is. My first thing that I got to do big time stuff was Motor Racing Network. And Mike Joy and I had shared a microphone at Thompson Speedway for an entire year, and Mike knew me well. I mean, this was not big time stuff yet. Motor Racing Network wasn't a big deal at that point. But Mike said, I think this guy can do radio. And so I got a call, and I got a shot to do Motor Racing Network, which eventually led to television. So Mike Joy was critical in that. Rich Benio, who was the guy who edited Stock Car Magazine and recommended me, was critical in me getting that job.
Yeah.
And all along the way, it's been somebody who spoke up in my behalf that made the difference. Ken Squire was with CBS, and they needed another pit road announcer, and Squire spoke up on my behalf. And I wound up with CBS, and CBS led to a lot more television. And eventually, for 33 years, I was on pit road. Never would have happened without Mike Joy and without Ken Squire.
And you guys were friends prior to this?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
See, yeah, that's what I'm saying. The smallest connections. I was just doing some behind the scenes for CBS the other day. Hopefully that leads into something for me as well.
Well, you're doing the right thing. If you're working with people that like you and think that you got the right stuff and that you make good decisions and that your work ethic is appropriate and you get along well with people, that's.
So from what I'm getting here is the communication is important, making sure your work ethic is good.
Yeah.
So how did you make sure your work ethic was okay? Like, how did you go that extra step further to make sure that people knew that, you were the guy? Like, it couldn't be anyone else. So you had to be the one that was doing the radio, that which, further led to television and so forth.
I'd have to get into Benio's head and Mike Joy's head and Ken Squire's head to tell you that, but I've never had any sort of a problem with work ethic. There was a time when I was working for 3 television networks and at the same time editing 2 auto racing magazines. It's insane. I would go 6 months without taking an afternoon off. The work ethic has always been there. I've always been ambitious, always wanted to go the next step. I think that was part of my guidance counselor telling me that I would never be able to pass college courses.
Oh, yeah.
It was another story too. For a while I thought, well, maybe I could become a professional photographer. I tried to get into a Rochester Institute of Photography's program, and I drove all the way to Buffalo, New York, and they told me you'll never pass our academic courses. Your pictures are great, but you'll never make it. And that's all I needed was enough people to tell me you'll never make it.
Yeah.
And I said, baloney. I'm going to make it.
Yeah, and then you just went ahead and proved them wrong. You're like, I made it.
Yeah, well, I don't know if some people would say, well, you didn't make it, you're still at it.
Oh, no, I definitely think you made it.
I think it helped to tell me that people told me that I wasn't good enough.
Okay.
It made a difference.
Yeah. So like you use one of those pitfalls. Like I consider life to be like one of those like escalators, and like sometimes like one of those steps fall out, so you have to use that to your advantage. Then you go 2 steps up.
Yep.
So you're saying like you use the people that like told you couldn't do anything or like do that specifically your college courses via your guidance counselor, and you use that to your advantage when launching yourself into that career path.
You got it.
Okay.
You keep doing this kind of stuff. You're gonna have a great future.
I appreciate it.
Yes.
Okay, next question here. After earning your doctorate, you worked as a psychology professor at Emmanuel College for 9 years before leaving to pursue your motorsports career. Did you ever regret this decision to leave academia?
I love teaching. It was.
That's what I would do if the salary was a little bit better.
Yeah, well, the salary was lousy when I was doing it too.
Oh, really?
And it was hard to run a race car. I'll tell you that on what I made there. But what was nice about it was having summers off. I regretted having the opportunity to work with young people and help guide them, and to share with them what I thought might help them to have a better life as they grew up. That was the biggest regret. The rest of it, I got a chance to do most of the rest of that stuff. I used to stand in front of a group of people and talk. Same as holding a microphone, standing in front of a group of people, you're talking.
Yeah. Do you feel like you were born with this, kind of like this ambition to like always go that 1 step further or 2 steps further and kind of just always be like the leader in that sense?
I don't think so.
I think so. You have to work for it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think what really happened was I had all this stuff of you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it. And when I got started, I got really lucky in my freshman year. I tried to get into Quinnipiac College, certainly, to make money, but I didn't know if I was going to make it or not. But I had a professor that really made a difference. His name was Leonard Kent. Leonard Kent. I'll never forget him. I studied pretty hard. I wanted to make it. This was very different than high school, where I couldn't have cared less about my classes. And we took the very first exam, and I thought I'd done well. And I'm back in my room, and I'm thinking, well, what do I got for exams tomorrow? And the phone rang. It was Leonard Kent.
Leonard Kent.
He said, you aced the exam today. Congratulations. nobody before that had
Yeah.
ever told me anything that was positive about what I had done in that regard.
In that
Okay,
regard.
aced the exam. Heck, I had trouble getting D's, never mind acing an exam. So that said, somebody believes in me.
Yeah.
Maybe I am okay. Maybe I can be a success. Maybe I can do things well.
Okay.
And then that was hammered down right to this morning, hammered down.
So you believe it's equally as important for people to kind of like, well, not equally as important, but like, you know, it can go both ways, kind of like people telling you, oh, you can't do this, but then also sometimes people telling you, oh, you know, congratulations on this, right? That's important too, because that way, you know, it'll push you forward, right? That dopamine, although it'll like push you down a little bit, right? You're still going to go forward.
Yeah, well, I think somewhere along the line, if you're having a bunch of failures, it really does help to have some success.
Yeah.
And whether it had been Leonard Kent or whether I'd been more successful doing something else, a little success that built some confidence that if I worked hard, maybe I could make something of myself.
Mm-hmm. The working hard is a key thing for everyone watching. You know, working hard is pretty much one of the bigger, right? Like
It is.
I always say like there's a whole bunch of little different quotes that you look at and like putting them all together. Sometimes they're controversial, but like when you put them all together, you know, like consistency is key, like time management, working hard, work ethic, and make sure to sleep your hours. All these things come together. So yeah, I mean, I can definitely see how like working hard is like knowing, keeping an open mind is what I say.
Yeah.
So that brings up another question that I want to ask you. What's your opinion on having an open mind and a closed mind? Like, are you the kind of person that's going to keep an open mind to like further opinion?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you have to have an open mind.
Yeah.
I'd never seen road racing before until I went to Watkins Glen one day, and oh my gosh, this is great. I love it.
Yeah.
I come here, I see the Rolex, I love the road racing.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was a kid, with my enthusiasm for auto racing, why would anybody road race? It's not dirt.
Yeah.
So, yeah, keeping an open mind is you don't want to have a closed mind.
Don't want to have a closed mind.
No.
I always try to emphasize that to my friends, and they don't believe me. So now I know, you know, credibility here. That's awesome that you think that, because that's something that I look forward to keeping in the future.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I just wish some of our politicians had more of an open mind.
Yes,
I think
that
that's what's gone on in politics in America. I don't care whether you're talking about the street level or nationally.
Yeah.
There's rigidity,
Right.
and you can't see another point of view, and that's not the way to achieve success. If you look at two sides of a story and then pick the correct one, as opposed to saying, well, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat and the other guys don't know what they're talking about. That's a mistake. I think it is.
Yeah, I do as well. I'm like right on the middle, and that's a little weird because I think I might want to get into politics as well. Near that later section of my life, I like to read books about it, like here and then. But I definitely think that's true, you know, keeping an open mind. But then with keeping that open mind, sometimes you'll receive some of that bash from people. They'll say, oh, you're not this, you're not that, like make up your mind. Right? I mean, you gotta keep an open mind, right? Like no matter what field you're in, religion, politics, whatever it may be, I think that's super important. I'm glad that you agree with me on that topic.
But when you find the right side of an issue, and you're convinced that the right side of the issue is correct, you stick with that.
Yeah.
You close your mind to the other idea that you've now dismissed, and stick with the one that you know is correct.
Yeah, definiteness is really important. That's what I learned the other day as pursuing leadership, is that, you know, if you're not definite with your concrete decisions, right, like who's going to believe your credibility is going to go down the roof, down the drain.
Yeah, that's right.
So brings me up to my next question. So did you have any difficulties making this career transition from the college to your actually career path?
Yeah, I did, because what happened when I got the job editing Stock Car Racing magazine, it required that I leave my home and my wife and my dog and go to Virginia, which I never had been to other than Martinsville Speedway and Richmond Raceway. And it was hard. I mean, my wife and I had a very good relationship then, and we still do. And leaving her behind was very hard, extremely hard.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I did it. I'm also glad that I told them, I'm done. I can't do this Virginia stuff anymore. I don't like being here. My wife eventually moved down, but it was just not for me. And they said, okay, then take the magazine back to Boston. You can edit it up there. Really? Yeah. So that's what happened. I basically took the thing back.
You were granted a great opportunity right then and there.
Oh, I came out of the Indianapolis 500 with a friend, and we literally walked across the street from the airport, from Washington Airport, rented a U-Haul truck, brought it to the apartment, took everything out of the apartment, put it in the back of the U-Haul truck, and we drove it back north, and that's where I stayed.
Probably driving like faster than the speed limit at that point.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I gotta get home.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't wait to get out of Virginia.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah. I can imagine that long distance can be difficult at times, but it has to be done sometimes to be able to make those career goals. And whether it's at that point or another point, sometimes some of these risks need to be taken. I've heard that as well. Taking risks, maybe not so much of a big risk, but one of those like emotionally stricken risks is important sometimes.
You have to take risks. Right. If you don't take risks, you're never going to get anywhere. You have to take chances. I mean, it's no different than a driver in a race car deciding that he's going to go the lower line. He's not sure whether it's going to make it or not, and it's going to be real tight because the other car is real close and that sort of stuff. You have to take risks. Sometimes you're going to crash if you take risks, and it's that way in life itself and in the business of trying to create a career. You have to take chances.
Well, NASCAR itself is the example of a risk. I mean, you're going so fast the entire time.
Well, look at the way NASCAR is run. Look at the risks that NASCAR took in 2020.
Okay.
Going to run races in the middle of the week. Going to run a doubleheader. First sport to get back in action again during the pandemic. They figured out how to do it.
First sport?
It was the very first sport to get back in action, of major sports. Baseball wasn't playing, football wasn't playing, nothing was going on. NASCAR got the cars on the track. Then, NASCAR was the first to figure out how to put fans in the grandstands. Okay. They did it with distancing. They did it smart. They spaced people out. New Hampshire Motor Speedway took out half of their seats, physically unbolted them, and took them out to make sure that people would have social distance in the grandstand. Down here, look at the risk they took building Daytona Speedway. $400 million. Will people come? Will this work? Yeah. And in the process, they had to tear down everything that they had here. You want to see a good definition of risk-taking, but calculated risk-taking. Watch the way NASCAR does things.
Okay.
These guys know how to take chances because most of the time they come out on top.
They make good. Right?
Yeah, they make good decisions. One of the very first interviews I did when I got the job as editor of Stock Car Magazine was to come here to Daytona, and I got an interview with Bill France Jr. And at the time, NASCAR was doing something no other sport was doing. Every year, things would be up 5%, 8%, 10%. More sponsors are coming in. More grandstand seating is being built because people just clamoring for the tickets to see these races. Sponsors, everything, TV, everything was working. So I came down and my basic question for Bill France was, how do you do it? You're doing better with this NASCAR stuff than any other sport in the country. And he looked at me and had a very simple answer. He said, we make good decisions. And I thought, well, that's pretty simple. Make good decisions. But then I got a little deeper into it. How do you make good decisions? Well, you surround yourself with very good people. You listen to both sides of the story, and you take some risks. I mean, the risk that they took here of tearing down their grandstand and building a huge new stadium costing $400 million. A
lot of money.
A lot of money, a lot of worry, a lot of challenges to overcome. They did it. You want a good role model? Do things the way NASCAR does them.
Well, I'm going to start reading more articles about how the team here at NASCAR started rebuilding their whole entire stadium, because that's insane. That amount of money is crazy. And I can imagine that a lot of thought went into it, right? Just saying make good decisions is like you said, I love the way you worded, look at both sides of both sides. You know what I mean? Like when two people are conversing or there's two different sides, whether it be politics or anything, just look at both sides. And if there's more than two, look at all the sides, right?
Yes.
You consider all
Absolutely.
options.
Yeah, and then pick the one you think is the right one. If there's 5 ways you can go, you got 4 chances where you're going to be wrong and 1 chance where you're going to be right. So think it through and make your call and go for it.
Well, that's something I'm going to take into consideration when I'm entering my career field now and always. So thank you.
Yeah.
So You worked both as a writer for several motorsports magazines and as an announcer for several networks. How did this compare to your previous work as a professor?
Well, it was a heck of a lot better because I had a chance to go to the races and somebody was paying me to do it.
Yeah.
So I've had a great life. I mean, for a kid that fell in love with automobile racing, to be able to spend the majority of your life doing it, even when I was a college professor, I was still racing every weekend.
Okay.
And I've never gotten away from it, and I'm sure I won't. I mean, when they get ready to close the lid on the box, I'll probably say, wait a minute, I want to see the race on Saturday night. Can we hold this off for a little bit?
Yeah. And so, like, the difference is, being that you were a professor, is there anything that you, like, took into consideration when scaling into that career path? Is there anything that was, like, similar, any differences that you really saw? Like, for example, being a professor, did that help you scale into that? You know, having one career path and then leading into another one?
I don't think being a professor did, but all of the studies that I did made a difference, and I think they helped a lot. I had some very inspiring professors who, well, I had questions like you have.
Okay.
When I was your age, I didn't really know what it was going to take in order to be a success. How do I know which way to turn? And I had some professors that were very, very good in that regard and offering advice that was profound and correct.
Okay, so your professors acted as mentors for you?
Sure.
Okay.
Any good teacher, professor is a mentor. Sometimes you're mentoring with 20 students in your class. Sometimes I had some classes with 100 and 120 students. There you're mentoring more people at one time.
Yeah.
And today it's just you and I. But that's what a teacher should do. That's what a professor should do.
That's what they should do, right? I mean,
that's what they should do.
See, that's what I look. That's what I look for in my professors. I can see that Berggren is doing an excellent job at mentoring me.
Yeah.
And Frank here at the Honors College at Daytona State College. I thought it was really interesting also that you mentioned that you went to a community college as well in the beginning of your career path, and that was for budget, right?
No, the community college was because I wanted to give back.
Give back.
Yeah, and the kids that were going to a community college were more like I was back then. Didn't have a dime, no money.
Yeah.
The kids that were going to Emmanuel College, they could afford to pay, their parents could afford to pay a tuition. So I took 1 year off from the paid college, and I taught at a community college. I felt I owed something to people like me, and to try and share some of the stuff that I'd learned in time. Just like when they called and said, we got a kid that's going to school and he wants some advice about what to do and how to make things work. You got time? Hell yes, here I am. You bet.
Yeah.
Every time I get a chance to help somebody like you, I'm on board.
I appreciate that so much. It's an honor, truly.
Well, I appreciate that you have an open mind and that you're taking all this in. And I hope you throw some of it away, but keep some of it.
I hope I keep all of it.
No, you don't want to keep all of it. I let people down bad paths.
Oh, yeah?
Not trying to do that, but it happens.
I'll use the ones that work for me.
There you go.
Okay, so next question here. So, you are famous for your signature flat cap.
Oh, jeez.
What,
This one?
what was your inspiration for this?
The inspiration for it was cancer. I get skin cancers, especially on my forehead and the top of my head. When I was a kid, I worked tobacco and potatoes and other things in Connecticut without a hat.
Okay.
And so it's predisposed me to have skin cancers. And I had a doc that was working with me one day, and she looked at me and she said, Mr. Berggren, I know you're a little bit pig-headed, but I'm going to give you an opportunity. I hope you'll understand. You can either wear a hat when you're out in the sun, or you can die of skin cancer. Which would you prefer? So there came the hat. The hat was okay with a brim if it was a night race. But TV has to see your eyes. They don't want to not see your eyes. Your eyes are a mirror to your brain and what's going on there.
Okay.
So they said, you can keep the hat. I said, I have to keep the hat. This is a matter of life or death. I can't be out in the sun without a hat. You can keep the hat, but you got to find a hat that doesn't have a brim. So I found these. No brim, no shadow in my eyes. And there was one night where I was working a race at Charlotte, North Carolina with Ken Squire, which, let me tell you, to stand next to Ken Squire in a broadcast booth, you are standing next to God in this business. I mean, he's just incredible, man. And I didn't have my hat. And he said, Bergie, where's your hat? And I said, Ken, I don't need the hat. This is night. I'm not going to have the sun be a problem here. Don't you ever be seen in public again without that hat. That hat is your signature. Always wear it.
Oh, yeah?
Ken Squire.
Huh.
Tip of the hat to him.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I have a social media mentor as well. They told me my hat in your example is my hair. And I was like, what? Like, I've only had it for like a year. And I was like, what?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, that's my image or something, right?
yeah.
And I'm more or less like, I think that my image would be better, more or less like what I provide to the world. But I think that's an awesome example with your hat. I noticed that you have a pair of sunglasses on the side there. Does that represent anything?
Yeah, that's a hotel I stay at when I'm at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. That's the Naswell Hotel, and that when you check out, they give you the little sunglasses.
That's cool. Do you change it up? They kind of add different pins at different times. Whatever works.
Whatever. Yeah, some of the hats. I think this is the only hat I have that has them, and I just happened to grab it out of the closet today for today's conversation.
Interesting. That's what I was saying in the beginning of the conversation. I wanted to get myself one, but I never understood why they were so interesting to me. Maybe it was the fact that sometimes painters wear them, or like film directors, but there's like different ones, like the berets and like these ones as well.
Yeah.
They're interesting to me. So I might go ahead and grab one myself.
Okay. Yeah. Don't cut your hair.
Don't cut it?
Don't cut your hair.
Oh man, you're acting.
That's who you are. I mean, I've known you for what, 30 minutes,
Yeah.
45 minutes?
Yeah.
That's who you are to me.
Oh yeah.
But you're young. You're just getting started, and if you can find a way that says, here's Michael. Here's who I am. That's not a bad thing. I mean, even today, I can be walking down the street in Daytona, and somebody will say, "Hey, you."
Yeah.
I know you.
Because of
Who are you? I said, "You watch NASCAR on TV?" Yeah. Oh, I know. You're the pit road guy. It's not a bad thing to have some recognition about your persona.
I like that. I like that word recognition because the whole, I think image sounds a little more, I don't know. I think people have a bad misconception. But let's move on to the next question here. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate that. You're acting as Tom McGuire for me kind of thing. So maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
So you, in your broadcast career, did you prefer doing commentary or reporting from the pits?
Oh, the pits.
From the pits.
The pits, yeah. You're right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's going on
Right
at that moment.
Yeah.
I just had a conversation with George Levy, who runs the museum where this thing is being recorded.
Okay.
And I told him about an experience that I had with Herschel McGriff. Now, Herschel McGriff was racing for a long, long, long time. And he was in his late 70s. And I'm covering a race at the California Speedway. I'm in the pits, and I got my headset on. And Herschel's one of the guys that I'm responsible for. I got to know what's going on. All of a sudden, I hear in my ear, Herschel. And he said, "Boys, I'm coming in." Pit crew. "Why? What's wrong with the car?" "Nothing wrong with the car. I can't keep up with these kids. I'm quitting right now. I'm all done racing." This is a guy that had raced all his life, run the Mexican road race, won races all over the country. And I had it, and I broke the story. Ladies and gentlemen, Herschel McGriff is coming off the racetrack right now. He is retired behind the wheel. He said, "That's it. I'm not going to race anymore." Oh. Can you imagine?
That voice sounds so familiar to me. I
Yeah.
love when you switched over. That's so cool.
Can you imagine
the
opportunity to do something like that? I was in Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s pit here at Daytona when he won the Daytona 500. To be there and experience those moments of the crew that had had so many disappointments when Dale Earnhardt finally won the race. I was also here at the Daytona 500 when he barrel rolled down the backstretch, and I'm standing there, and all of a sudden, here's Earnhardt's car in the pit. Ladies and gentlemen, Dale Earnhardt hasn't had enough. He's been upside down twice here, but they're working on the car. He's going to go back on the racetrack. I put that story out. When you get a chance to do stuff like that on pit road, you're up in the booth, and the best you can do is what you can see.
Yep.
And it's got to be what's on the monitor.
Well, how do you improvise? I mean, when you're doing these commentaries, and when you're doing like in the pits, and like how do you actually improvise your voice to where you can naturally enter a flow state where you're naturally speaking about that? That's so fascinating to me.
I don't know. You just do it.
I just do it. I don't know.
Yeah, you just do it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I can learn a thing or two from you as far as that. I'm still working on my communicative methods and learning how to flow from one thing to another, but
Be
that's
yourself.
that's fascinating. Be
Just
myself.
just be yourself.
Be yourself.
Yeah, don't try to be somebody that you're not.
Mhm.
Be yourself, and if you feel it, and if the moment moves you, let your emotion get through, and share it with whoever it is you're dealing with or the microphone you're talking into.
Okay. And it just so happened to be that your like true personality was the one that they were looking for at that time, right? When you entered that career path.
Well, I think it's hard to not let your enthusiasm show through. If you really love what you're doing, if you really love, and as a TV announcer or a magazine writer, if you really love the sport you're covering and the people who participate in it, you can't mask that. It shows through. The same way, I mean, there are some people who have come into television broadcasting whose first interest isn't auto racing. They're broadcasters. They're not auto racing people.
Okay.
And I can tell them in a minute. I can tell the racing people from the people who are professionals, professional broadcasters. So do what you love to do.
Because their enthusiasm is seeking through, and you can see that.
It's just different. I don't think. I think if
Kind
you
of awkward.
if you don't really love automobile racing, you can't fake it. If you don't love baseball, I don't think you can fake that you love baseball as an announcer. I had chances to do other sports, and I turned them down because I didn't think I could do it well.
It wasn't natural to you.
Do it. Do what you're good at.
Okay.
Do what you care about.
And for me, that's film directing. So that's, I mean, I've done this for 5 years, so
Yeah.
I like to just kind of practice asking people things and recording them, editing things together. So yeah. I mean, I'll take a thing or two from that.
Good.
Definitely, just be myself.
Yeah.
Don't try and
Don't
fit
try
an
to
image.
be somebody else.
Right.
Yeah.
And don't let that enthusiasm seeking through. It's helping me restating it, so I know, so I remember this.
Yeah.
Okay, so, that's an interesting one. Do you have a?
They have all been interesting ones so far.
Well, this one. Do you have a particular mantra or philosophy that you followed throughout your reporting career?
I don't think I've had one mentor. I've had a lot of people that have guided me. I think watching some of the broadcasts, when you finish, replay them and look at them. I think you can be your own mentor to a degree.
Listen to yourself.
Yeah. But there have also been some things along the way of life that have been really helpful to me. One was a book that I read when I was a college student called Up the Organization by Robert Townsend. At the time, he was running Avis Car Company and had taken it from virtual extinction into a very successful company. And his basic slogan, he put it on a sign in front of his desk, and I have since had it in front of my desk, is what I'm doing now getting me where I want to go. Number one, it forces you to think about what your goals are. What are you trying to do? Where are you trying to go?
Yeah.
And at this moment is what I'm doing helping that. Or am I sidetracked? Am I doing something I shouldn't be doing? I've actually been pushing the lawnmower in the yard and stopped and gone in the house and gone back to work again.
Yeah.
So is what I'm doing now getting me where I want to go? No, I don't need to mow the lawn. Heck with it.
That's fascinating that you bring that up, because I just wrote a scholarship essay all about how what you're doing in the moment is more important than what you're planning to do later, because
Sure is.
it's all relating.
Yeah.
It all relates to it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, can you back me up on that? I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you another one. Alan Kowicki's motto was to make the most of every day. Father Gruba, Dale Gruba, did the eulogy at Alan's funeral. He lost his life in a plane crash while he was the defending NASCAR Cup Series champion. And Gruba kept spelling that out, that Alan would say, have I made the most of every day? Have I made the most of today? Have I made the most of the opportunities that face me? And it was Alan's philosophy. So those two things are in front of me at my desk still to today. Make the most of every day.
Make the most
of it. And it's what I'm doing now, getting me where I want to go.
And not to be confused with living in the moment too much, right?
Yeah.
Because then you're going down a pitfall, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, you got a plan.
Right.
Yeah, you got to think about your future.
But if you have a plan, that's what I wanted to do one of these days, is just kind of go to a coffee shop or go to a park, just bring a notepad with me and just start writing down, right? Like, what am I doing now that really contributes to where I want to be?
Yeah.
And I think that what you're giving me here is great advice.
Good, I hope so.
I'm taking it all in. Next question. How do you think that your experience as a former driver helped your journalism career? Did I ask this one? Is it similar to the other?
No, you haven't.
Okay.
But where it helped was I understood the cars a bit, and I think that made a difference. I think the fact that I won races and lost races, I've been through big crashes. I think the people that I interviewed respected that. They knew that I wasn't somebody that was a professional broadcaster or a professional writer that had somehow or another stumbled into automobile racing. I was somebody that cared about it.
Okay.
And so I think they were more open with me. But it also helped me to see things that maybe I otherwise wouldn't see. There was one day when I was, gosh, I can't remember if it was with MRN or CBS or who it was with, but it was here at Daytona. And I'm going through the garage, and the hood's up in Richard Petty's car. And I looked and I saw that the tie rod that connects the two front wheels and makes them go together like this, instead of that tie rod being, or that radius rod being behind the ball joint points, it was in front of it. That was the first front steer card I had ever seen. It was MRN radio. And I was able to say, ladies and gentlemen, Richard Petty has got a car here for this year's Daytona 500 that's different than any other car in the field. This is a front steer car, not a rear steer car. The tie rods are actually in front of the ball joints. And I can't remember offhand how Richard did.
Yeah.
That wasn't his problem. He was having trouble with balance of the car that particular year. If I hadn't raced cars, if I hadn't skinned my knuckles with 9/16 wrenches, I probably wouldn't have ever known that.
You were actually working on the cars as well.
Oh yeah, I mean,
So you're saying that
at my level of racing, at the local level of racing, let me tell you what, bud, you're skinning your knuckles, you're under the car, you've got grease under your fingernails, and you're fighting for every last dollar for another set of tires.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was working on the cars.
I can imagine that was in addition to the double shifts that you were working at the time.
Oh,
right?
yeah, kind of.
Wow. But you loved it, right? You got to do what what you like to do, and you got to follow your heart, or whatever. So that's what I'm doing now. It's like just following like my gut and my heart and my brain, I guess, trying to figure out how to combine all those together.
Just listening to you, you're on a good track. You're on a very good track.
Thank you.
Don't move off it. You're handling your life very well. You are.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Next question: are there any particular hazards to being a pit reporter?
Not so much now.
Not now, but before.
Before, there certainly were. Places like North Wilkesboro didn't have anything separating the cars on pit road from those of us who were behind pit road doing the announcing. You could put yourself in a hazardous situation working pit road back in the day. I remember standing on the wall here, which they don't let you do anymore. I remember standing on the wall here at Daytona Speedway one time during a sportsman race. They don't even have that division anymore. And somebody came off turn 4 backwards, spinning wildly. And I'm standing up there and I'm calling it, and all of a sudden I realize he's coming right for me. So I jumped off the wall and backed up some. Nobody came to me and said, Berg, you don't get back on that wall again. Yeah. I got right back up again.
They did?
Yeah, that wasn't too smart. It was also the matter early on, before we had microwave, for the short tracks, we would be tied to cables, so you're dragging your wires behind you when you're jumping over tires, and you've got crews that are doing pit stops.
Cables and everything.
Oh yeah,
wow.
They're doing pit stops.
I mean, do you carry that stuff?
Oh yeah.
What about now? Same thing?
Now you're not hooked to anything.
It's all wireless.
It's all wireless. Yeah. Back then, it was you were just tied to wherever your truck was, wherever your plug-in was.
You should have had someone behind you, like picking the stuff with you.
Well, I wish I had somebody to help me, but back then we didn't have spotters. I mean, the money wasn't there to do that kind of stuff. So it was real primitive compared to where it is now. Believe me. I mean, all these guys on pit road have spotters now. I think they do. I don't know about COVID. I mean, I can't get on pit road now, and nobody can except the people that are doing the actual broadcast and the actual competitors. But,
speaking of the hazards, I noticed that NASCAR just recently put this new fence up that's like more preventative against the cars flying through. I was just watching like when you're in YouTube watching top crashes or whatever, because it's just like interesting. You're on a deep section of YouTube, and I was seeing some of the cars flying through, and some of the new fences as opposed to the old ones are a lot more protective when the cars are flying through, right? Some of the bits and pieces are obviously going to go through when the car is coming down, if it were to come to that. but the new fences are a lot more preventative.
Not only the fences, but NASCAR has done things with the cars and
really?
with keeping. Oh yeah, I mean some of the components now are literally tied to the chassis, so that if there's a big crash, things don't come off.
Oh,
They've done a great job of improving everybody's safety. It's not just the drivers that are safer. It's also the TV people that are on pit road. It's the crew members.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a time when the crew members, just like the drivers, worked in T-shirts. So if you had a fire, everybody's in the fire, and you have no protection against it. Now the crews all have to have helmets when they go over the wall. They have to wear fireproof uniforms,
it's fireproof.
And so did the drivers.
Wow.
And it's much safer for everybody.
You appeared as yourself in the film, and correct me if I'm
Talladega
wrong.
Nights.
Talladega Nights.
Yep.
Well, could you tell us about this experience being in this film?
Let's just put it this way. I got a residual check for about $30 last week for that. and that was how many years ago? It was crazy. It really was. I had an agent at the time. If you're doing broadcast television, you have an agent. And mine was in New York, and she called one day and she said, "Would you like to do a movie?" And
Okay.
I said, "Sure, I'd love to do that. It'd be fun." So I went to Charlotte, and we did the movie, and the whole thing was done and over with pretty quickly. I think probably I was with the actual set for maybe 10 minutes, but it was a neat experience. It was fun, and how interesting that movie was. I mean, it's still playing in places, and it was a neat opportunity. It was.
You ever sometimes just like have your friends come over and it's like, oh, let's watch this one part that I was in.
Oh yeah. Here's the guy that starred in Talladega Nights. What are you talking about? I had a part for about 30 or 40 seconds, and that was it.
Well, that's a lot more than what a lot of other people got. I have some family members that got in for like a couple seconds in some movies, but if ever anything like that, that's a really cool experience.
You have to get a speaking part. You get a speaking part, and you get paid, and that wasn't too bad getting paid. But that was a fun thing to be able to do.
Well, we got to talk more about the agent situation afterwards because I'm looking into that a little bit myself now, scaling in like the next 5 years or so, thinking about what agencies I might go into.
Yeah, you got somebody that knows the ropes, that knows. We started this conversation with talking about how important it was to have people who would recommend you. I had a terrific agent, and she knew people, and so when it came time for another opportunity, she was able to send it my way. And it made a difference. Another friend, somebody else that was there to help.
Was she actually working? Oh, she was a friend.
Yeah. Well, she became a friend. I didn't even know her. Mike Joy recommended her.
Oh.
So there you are.
Huh.
So Mike keeps showing up.
Yeah.
In my career, and that was another. So.
I can't thank Mike enough. For all that stuff.
Yeah.
You said that you have always enjoyed and can't get enough of local racing.
Yeah.
So what attracts you so much to local racing?
Honestly, I don't know other than I've got a connection to it because I did it. I raced on the local level, and I knew I wasn't good enough to ever go anywhere beyond the local level. And I see kids in the local level that just inspire. Andy Jankowiak, a local level racer out of upstate New York, is on his way to Talladega, Alabama with a car that he got from Ken Schrader. They've worked on it in a little garage that hardly has room for the car itself. And he found sponsors. He ran in Daytona when he was here, and he's going to go to Talladega, and he's going to race Talladega. And I think, good for you. That's a local level racer who is making it.
Yeah.
And seeing his dreams become reality. He always wanted to race Daytona. He not only raced Daytona, he finished it. He finished well. He did it. And to see people with those kinds of dreams, those kinds of aspirations, it's great. But you don't have to have big aspirations. You can be a guy that just wants to win. Gosh, I want to win a feature race. My father raced, and he won so many races. I want to win a feature. I want to do it. I'm going to get it, too. I'm going to win a feature race. I'm going to go home with the trophy and the checkered flag, and I'm going to do it. And you go to local level races, you can see that kind of stuff. It's fun, and plus it's good racing. It really is. Local level stuff. You can see some real daring maneuvers in local level racing. You can also see some bonehead maneuvers. And so you can cheer for the guy that makes the good maneuver and just say, what is he thinking, to the guy that made the bonehead move.
Well, it brings up another point, is that I was just recently working with Logan Mizuraka, creating a commercial for them. I was driving down the I-4 and I pulled over. I noticed that some people were taking some pictures of this new racer, Logan Mizuraka, because she races for the New Smyrna Speedway.
Yeah.
And I think now, within the next coming weeks or months, I think she already signed, but she'll be doing the truck series for NASCAR as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Good for her.
So she's going pretty fast. I think she's actually 19 or 20 now.
Yeah.
And so I actually had the opportunity to work with them and get a commercial on Cozy TV, and then maybe possibly CBS.
Good for you. Wow.
But it brings up that opportunity that, like, I was also given the opportunity to see someone in the local racing community and then scale up.
Yeah.
But I have no idea, like, the intimidations that come with that. What are the steps required to get to that point? You can imagine that I would imagine that there's a level of intimidation going from the local level to, the truck series and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
is there any advice that you would give someone kind of going into that field?
Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. I'm talking to you right now. Keep doing what you're doing. She's moving up to the truck series.
Yeah.
That guy
That's
with the long hair that was so smart, that was around us when we were doing the New Smyrna stuff. Maybe she'll remember you. Maybe she's the person that's going to speak up for you when she makes it big.
Maybe.
Could be.
If you're watching, Logan.
Well.
That's cool. Well, next question is your primary interest in motorsports has always focused on short tracks.
Yeah.
Well, what do you like so much about short tracks?
Well, it's the people that are there. The people are so interesting.
No, it's different.
Here's a guy that's working a regular job. He's got a 9-to-5 job, and he can't wait to get home to work on his stock car. I like that. I really do. And then on Saturday night, there used to be a television show called Thursday Night Thunder, and then it became Saturday Night Thunder, and Dave Despain did the intro for it, and there was a line there, and they live for Saturday night. And that's what it is with a lot of local racers. No matter what else is going on during the day, when they're at work, or even when they're working on the car, they live for Saturday night. Despain had it right, and you get people that are passionate about that sort of thing, and they're fun to watch, living their dream.
Interesting. So you say that people are more communicative. So you feel like it's more of a niche community, kind of, in that sense?
I don't know if the Saturday night thing is a niche community. I think if you went to a local Saturday night track, you'd find that you could just walk up to a team and wait for the right moment and go over and talk to them. Hey, how's the car running tonight? What's going on with your team? And,
Okay.
how are things going for you? And what do you want to achieve tonight? Where do you think you're going to finish? That sort of stuff.
That's nice.
And pretty soon you got a friend. You stop back and see him again the next week, the next week, the next week. And
Do you have a closer bond with them? You could see them on the tracks and stuff, and on camera, and you could say, "Oh, I know that person, right?"
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get in the pits at the Indianapolis 500, but you can get in the pits at New Smyrna Speedway or Volusia County Fairgrounds. You can get into both. You can buy a pit pass. You get in. You can talk to people, and they'll talk with you. And then you go out and watch them do what they do. I was at Volusia watching the sprint car guys this February, and I was pretty good where I ran, but watch them run wide open without lifting all the way around on that racetrack. And then you stand there and you say, I'm standing with a guy that can do something I can't do. It's special. It is.
As a New Englander, what is your opinion of the racing scene there?
Of
The racing scene there.
in New England?
Yeah.
Depends on the track. Some of the tracks do really well, and I mean, I like a racetrack where they start the fast guys in the back. I like a racetrack where the show goes boom, 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 where you don't have a lot of downtime between races. I like the track that knows how to make a good French fry. By the way, you use russet potatoes and you cook them in peanut oil. That's the way to make a good French fry. You don't take frozen potatoes and pour them in. So yeah, some tracks do it well, some tracks don't do it well, and the ones that do it well are the ones I go back to.
And so you're saying, like, as opposed to the shorter tracks, are you referring to the longer tracks here?
Oh, I mean, I can have a really good time at Stafford Speedway. I can have a wonderful time at Beach Ridge Speedway. There's a 3rd-mile track and a half-mile track. But I can come here to Daytona Speedway and sit in that stadium and just thrill myself no end. It's what you're seeing, what's going on. If I go to a racetrack where they start the fast guy up front and there's little or no passing, where the food is lousy, where the announcer can't do anything but give you a list of sponsors that are providing money for the race car out there, I'm not going to be having a good time. But if I go to a racetrack where you've got somebody like a Dave Moody that's calling the show, and where you've got close racing, and where the fast guy starts in the back, so there's a lot of passing, I'm having a wonderful time. I love it. But I know enough about what's going on in the big league. I can go to any of the big league races and really enjoy them.
Interesting. What are your thoughts on the current and future of short track racing?
I think the future of short track racing has a lot to do with real estate values. More racetracks are closed up and turned into something else because of money, and I understand that. One of my great ambitions in life is to see a shopping mall torn down and a racetrack built on the property. I have seen too many racetracks torn down and shopping malls built there. It seems to have leveled out at this point. It seems that the racetracks that have survived have got people running them pretty much that know what they're doing. There are a few that are still not well run, but most of them are pretty well run. And I'd like to believe that they're going to be around for a very long time. I think they're extremely important for the sport as a whole.
Yeah.
Virtually everybody you see in the Daytona 500 started at a local short track. They didn't start racing cars on 1 mile and 2.5 mile ovals. They started on a short track. So it's important to give people an opportunity to learn how to drive there and learn how to take care of engines and learn how chassis work and all the rest of what's involved in the sport. So it's very important, and I think short track racing now is as healthy as it can be given the COVID problems we're faced with.
And you've got to skill in, right? You've got to start somewhere, right? With the New Smyrna Speedway and with the other short tracks. I mean, you've got to start somewhere. And it's not like it's a low thing, right? There's big races to be won.
Yeah.
And like you said, you knew someone that skilled in from the short tracks to the eventually the longer tracks and the bigger ones.
Yeah.
I knew someone. It's a stepping stone.
Yes,
right?
it is.
In this career path, it's a stepping stone. So I believe in that. What do you consider to be your greatest career achievement?
Winning a race.
Winning a race.
Winning a race. Yeah. My
Which
biggest achievement, I raced for probably 15 years without winning anything. And one day it just all came together at a half-mile dirt track in Massachusetts that no longer exists, a housing development now. But the checkered flag came down for me before anybody else had taken that checkered flag. That was just huge.
Better felt amazing.
That was my greatest. Yeah, that was my greatest achievement. Maybe winning 20 features in the sprint car at Beach Ridge is right up there. But I think most drivers will tell you that the first win that was huge.
And in 2020, you were inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. So, how did you react to receiving the NASCAR 2020 Hall of Fame?
Well, it was actually the Squire Hall Award that I won, and it's given to people that do journalism, and somebody thinks that they do it well.
Okay.
So it was for my journalism career. Certainly wasn't because I'd driven a lot of NASCAR cars and won a lot of races. I mean, I was no Bobby Allison by a long shot. But still, that's one of the highest honors you can get, is to win that award and to have my stuff on display there, some of my trophies from when I drove cars and my notes from a Daytona 500 that I worked on. I just can't tell you. I mean, to reach this point in your life and have stuff like that happen for you it's very moving. It's very wonderful.
Especially being that it was so recent. Why do you think it took them so long to get your name out there?
Well, maybe I didn't do enough. I don't know. But I'm proud that it is there. I'm proud that nobody can take that away from me. I won that award, and especially the fact that it was named for one of my mentors, Ken Squire and Barney Hall, and Barney was with MRN when I worked with MRN, and so I got to know him pretty well, and both those guys are way up on the pedestal with me.
So to be clear, you are in the Hall of Fame, but the name of the award was?
The Squire Hall Award.
The Squire Hall Award, okay.
Yeah.
And it was for journalism?
It's for journalism.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that. They actually just awarded me the Hall of Fame at Daytona State, but that's the name of the award, and that's why I
Really?
mentioned. Yeah.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah, apparently it's like 16 people win it out of 13,000 at the college. I don't know how many people are there now, but that's interesting that you, because I was reading this 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's interesting. You know, you got the Hall of Fame award, or the journalism one in the Hall of Fame. Mine
Yeah.
was called Hall of Fame. But that's interesting that we both kind of recently. I'd like to
Yeah.
scale into something huge like that one day in my career path. Maybe not in a museum like this, but in.
Well, you never know, you might be in a museum like this. I mean, they have awarded people that have come from journalism, people that have run racetracks, people that have driven race cars, people who promoted races. You look at the bronze plaques that are in this building, and there's people from all walks of motorsports who are there, all walks. So,
Interesting.
go for it. Go
Just-
for it.
just go for it, right?
Maybe
Just
your
keep-
bronze will be here one day.
Well, they should have put your name in there a lot sooner, because I can imagine you've always had that drive your whole life.
Oh, yeah.
You've always pushed hard.
Yep.
But it takes time, right? And so
It does.
persistence is important, consistency,
Yeah.
time. Next question, and this one was actually written. Let me see if I can read this one. Tell me about, and I'm not sure if you can read that one there. It's the it's another award. It's this one
Macklemore
here,
Award, yeah. The Macklemore Award started, a long time ago when Unical was very involved in NASCAR, and the guy that ran it decided that every year one person who had demonstrated excellence in motorsports journalism would get this award named for Henry Macklemore, who was an early journalist covering motorsports. And I won it back in the early 1980s for my work at Stock Car Racing magazine, and it was a proud moment. Right now, that award is at Talladega for all of us who have ever won it, but I hope it's eventually going to be displayed here. I think this would be a great place to have it. There's some other places that might be nice too, but I'm very proud to have won that award.
So you mentioned it was for the journalism and the stock.
Yes.
Stock. Is there any piece that really kind of honed everything together to make that award come into place?
I have no idea.
No
It was
idea.
40 years ago.
Yeah.
I won that thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Interesting. Just work hard and it'll come, right? Like, work really hard.
Yeah,
You know?
well, work really hard and
Know how to get there.
get along with people. I mean, there are people who have never won the Macklemore Award more because people didn't like them. They were just disagreeable people. There are a lot of journalists
They have a
who-
closed mind.
Yeah, just nasty people, people you don't want to be around. I shouldn't say a lot of those. There's a few of them, and they're never going to win the Macklemore. Right now, the Macklemore is decided by others who have won it. The guy who started it is no longer involved in motorsports, so those of us who have won it in the past every year, we vote on somebody, one person, to get the award. And so it's an award by your peers, which makes it, to me at any rate, when your peers say you've done okay, that's real special.
Your peers, the ones that are racing next to you and like working with you, kind of thing.
Well, your peers, in this case, in the case of the Macklemore, your peers are the people who have won the award before. There are other journalists who have won it.
Okay.
And so those of us who have won the Macklemore every year, we get together and we say, well, here's a guy out in California that has done a wonderful job for this newspaper or that television station or what have you.
Yeah.
And you nominate him, then you argue about who should win it, and then one person usually comes up and gets it. Not every year. We don't have a winner every year. If there's not enough of a percentage, I mean, if somebody essentially wins the vote by one vote, they're probably not going to get the award. You have to have pretty much a consensus to win it. The people who are voting, the people who have already won the award, have to vote you in.
So being that you've given these awards in the past as well, like you've
Yeah.
been a part of the voting process.
Yes.
Well, first off, how many people are involved in the voting process, and what do you look for when you're looking for someone that's deserving of this award?
Well, I think right now we're probably, because this is the living Macklemore people, and this award has been going on for a long time, so a lot of us are gone.
Okay.
But right now, there's probably 20 of us that vote. And what we look for is somebody that has done an incredibly good job of being a motorsports journalist. What have they contributed?
Motorsports journalist.
Motorsports journalist, yeah.
Okay. I think it's interesting that you entered the career of journalism from motorsports as opposed to the other way around, where a lot of other people do. Do you think it's common for people to kind of enter from the other route now? From the route that
I don't know. I
Don't know.
really don't know. I think there certainly are a lot of people that are in motorsports journalism because they first like racing, but there are plenty of people in motorsports journalism who want to do journalism, and they found racing just as some people find basketball or baseball or what have you.
Well, I can imagine with the bigger population, there's probably like more of each, a lot more of each, and I'm just hoping that there's opportunities for everyone, because at the end of the day, you really got to show that you're putting your best foot forward. You've got to be better than everyone else. So what did you do to make sure that you were always ahead of the competition?
Make the most of every day is what I'm doing now, getting me where I want to go. How many hours can I stay awake to work to get things done?
Time is super important.
Time is critical.
So critical. Yeah.
You think of any one moment in your life, and that moment is gone, and you can't go back and you can't replace it. So make the most of that moment, and think about where you're going. Is what you're doing making sense for what your goals are? What are your goals? Make the good use of your time.
Interesting.
You're not gonna make anything of yourself if you spend a lot of time drinking beer in a bar room. You're gonna make something of yourself by working hard, by spending time and focus and not wasting your time.
That's what I always say. I like to divide my day in thirds and kind of just, assign little tasks. I've heard about the Pomodoro effect, to work in intervals of 20 minutes and then take 5-minute breaks. I've heard of entering a flow state where you work for 4 hours and then kind of take, but there's different ways that work for different people, right?
Well, there is, but think of this, and this is back from my days studying psychology.
Okay.
The human attention span is 90 minutes.
90 minutes.
90 minutes. The majority of movies are 90 minutes. In baseball, the seventh inning stretch is 90 minutes after the game starts, roughly. 90 minutes is about the length of the human attention span. I wouldn't work without at least some kind of a breather. Yeah. Go to the bathroom, drink a water, whatever. But take some little break every 90 minutes.
That's interesting, because that's just right around the point where I start to slow down after I'm writing an essay, right? That's why, it might be why I write essays so fast in like the period of like an hour, and then after that it's just like,
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to see from you, having studied psychology and all of those little tips and tricks. That is super interesting to me, just knowing the little things. I guess that brings up another question now that you're here and having studied psychology. What's your opinion on the spirit concept and like the idea of like romance and like how that plays into, infinite intellectuality kind of thing? Like being able to be smarter, right? I want to be smarter every day. Do you feel like romance plays like any particular part to that? Like, you having a wife for like a long period of time, do you feel like that affects the brain somehow, being that you studied it?
I don't know if that does. I think having somebody beside you is really important, somebody that you care about and that other person cares about you as well. I think that's a critical thing. There are plenty of people who've done very well by themselves. They don't have a partner, wouldn't want a partner. One of the guys that's got trustee at our museum, or on the board of directors rather, at our museum, happily announced that he has no wife, he has no children, and he just got rid of one of his plants.
The last living thing is.
Yeah, and he's totally by himself, and it works for him.
Yeah.
But I think for most people, to have a shoulder to lean on, somebody to bounce ideas off, is really helpful, especially if it's somebody that's going to be critical and tell you, Michael, you can't do that. This is just not helping you. But it says in my mind it is. Here's why it's not. You're right. You're right. Thank you for telling me that. Somebody beside you is a good idea.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And then the next one here says, given your experience in both fields, what advice do you give to young people interested in pursuing a career in journalism or motorsports? My career has to do a little bit with journalism, but more along this side of with the camera. But for young people that are entering journalism and motorsports, what advice would you give to them?
It's best if you're going to enter motorsports if you like it first. If you don't like motorsports, if you don't care about it, find something else to do with your life. Okay. And I think the journalism is essentially the same. If you like what you're writing about or what you're broadcasting about, if you care about it, you've got a much better chance of being a success than if you don't like it. If it's just, if you wouldn't cross the street to watch an auto race, you better not try to earn your living in auto racing. If you wouldn't, I don't care about baseball. If somehow or another I got a phone call tomorrow and they said you could have a job at ABC as a baseball announcer, I'd turn it down. I wouldn't even listen to how much money they were going to pay or anything else. I'd say, not doing it.
It's important.
You gotta do what you like. I mean, this, here we go again with a moment's gone once it's passed, and you can't make it up again. You may as well spend your life doing something you care about, being around people you like being around, people you admire, people you respect. That's why I've had so much fun with this stuff. I mean, to be able to be here at Daytona Speedway with the NASCAR offices literally right across the street with so many people over there that I respect and I admire and I think a lot of, and then down there, here in February, watching those guys go around this racetrack at the speeds that they go, and I'm just amazed lap after lap of seeing it. It's nice to be around stuff that makes you happy.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's nice to
And you better like motorsports if you want a career in it. If it's just a career where you think you're going to make money, do something else.
And is there a lot of money in motorsports? I mean,
well, yeah. If you're a winning driver, you can do pretty well. There are some track owners that have done pretty well. I understand the France family has made a couple of dollars at any rate doing this. Jim France is in the Forbes 400, I guess it is, 400 wealthiest people in the country, and the France family has earned it. I mean, they have worked incredibly hard, started with basically nothing, and they built this empire. So, yeah, you can make money in racing. It doesn't come easily, but then again, I mean, there's a lot of people that have gotten into investing lately.
Yeah.
And they think that they can just sit at their computer for a couple hours a day and they can get fabulously rich.
I see that.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
No. There's a story in today's Wall Street Journal about people that thought they were going to do that, and now they're broke and they're trying to pay their bills. You got to care about it. You got to put time and effort into it.
I believe that there is no shortcuts.
No.
I mean.
Oh, there is. The only shortcut, though, is inherit a lot of money. Then you can do what you want to do.
What is it?
Inherit a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
That's the easiest way in the world to get rich.
And I heard that's dangerous as well. Like so I just keep bringing up a book, but I was just reading. It's called. I'm reading it right now. It's called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I believe is who it is. He just speaks about the many ways to grow rich in mentality, spiritually, financially. But he was saying that the same concept, that it could be dangerous to inherit wealth, because then, with great power comes great responsibility. We've heard so many times.
Yes.
With money, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
If you have a lot of money, who's going to stop you from doing something, right? Something with it. So if you're inheriting it, but then also you have to know how to put it in the right pockets, right, to be able to make that career path that you want to do.
And if you're not careful, you can really throw a lot of money away in a heartbeat.
That's true. That is
you
one.
really can. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it many times. I mean, read the Wall Street Journal, and almost every day there's a story in there of somebody that was worth $4 billion yesterday, and now all of a sudden they're bankrupt because they didn't do things well and made mistakes and maybe got involved in too much margin investing and things of that nature.
To wrap up our conversation, I just have one
Oh,
last
do we
question.
have to wrap it up? I'm having a good time.
Yeah, me too. I don't want to
All
wrap it up.
right.
We can just keep talking afterwards.
All right.
But the last question here is, where do you place yourself in the history of motorsports?
I'm just a guy that liked racing. And where I place myself is how I feel about myself. And I just feel profoundly grateful that I've had the opportunities that I have. I was just a little kid that one day wanted to drive a race car. And then I became a guy that wanted to win races. And then I became a guy that wanted to edit Stock Car Racing magazine. And then I became a guy that wanted to do radio. And then I became a guy that wanted to do television. And I've done all that. And so I've had a really, really good life. But there's one other thing to share with you, and it is I feel incredibly lucky. I'm going to be 79 in a couple of weeks.
Happy early birthday. Happy early birthday.
Thank you. But I'm healthy. My wife is healthy. We care deeply about each other. The dog is fun to be around. And I'm at a point in my life where my contemporaries are dying. And the fact that I can still go to the gym and lift weights, I can still ride my motorcycle, I can still go to the races. I can't drive race cars anymore, I know that. But there's a lot I can do in my life still at age 79, and I'm very grateful for that.
Incredible. I mean, that's awesome. I wish I could celebrate with you. I mean, your birthday, that's super cool. Super cool to be around you. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Well, good, I'm glad.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with me, Dick.
Well,
I really appreciate all the advice that you're giving me here.
Well, I hope it helps you. As I said somewhere along the line in this thing, I just lost the lab.
Maybe just hold it right here.
I guess I could. I gotta have it right side up. I'm not sure which is the right side. There's drill holes on both sides.
Maybe these ones are running too.
Yeah,
We're good.
yeah. But I mean, what's nice about the conversation with you is it's clear that you got a really good head on your shoulders. You're thinking about your future, and at your age to be doing that, you have a lot better chance to be very successful than a lot of your contemporaries who are just looking forward to going out and sitting on a blanket on the beach on Sunday afternoon. You're not going to waste your time. You're going to put your time to good use.
I appreciate that so much, Dick.
You
Thank
will.
you.
Yep. Okay.